In the 2005 film War of the Worlds, directed by Steven Spielberg and inspired by the H.G. Wells novel, Tom Cruise plays a father who strives to protect his children when alien invaders attack the planet Earth. In this video, we'll take a look at one scene where Tom's character and a crowd of people first see the aliens and explore how the action story beats are written. Per usual, there will be spoilers to the film, so I recommend checking it out before proceeding further. Prior to the scene we'll examine, Tom Cruise's character Ray Ferrier heads out of his home, telling his kids to stay inside and be safe. Strange electrical storms, strong winds, and dark clouds have descended on their town. Ray joins a growing crowd of onlookers who gather around a strange crack in the ground near an intersection. As the scene starts to unfold, the ground shakes apart, creating chaos, and a large octopus-like spacecraft emerges from under the ground. This is where we start to look at how the action beats are crafted for the scene. We can think of writing the action story beats as simple, declarative sentences that convey what we will see on screen. What makes this simple action scene work is that it's essentially a chase scene where Ray, as the main protagonist, has to change tactics as the threat escalates. Ample time is taken to establish the presence of the threat, increasing suspense, followed by the payoff, which plays over several story beats as the alien spacecraft starts to destroy the town. For example, we see the large scale of the spacecraft established with relation to the size of the town and people, and then we hear a threatening horn sound from the spacecraft that seems foreboding. This is all set up, and with any initial threatening move from an antagonistic force, we want to then show the reaction of the protagonists. So the filmmakers cut to reaction shots of the crowd as they try to make sense of the horn sound and this large spacecraft in front of them. We then start to get glimpses of a few people running away. The tension is being stretched out, but now we know that there's a hint of an impending threat. More reaction shots from the crowd are used, and we also see the main protagonist Ray in the crowd, which helps us to see geographically where he is situated. The camera rotates and pushes into Ray as he looks up at the spacecraft, heightening the moment. Another man in the crowd enters the foreground with a video camcorder, which will be used in a specific framing shot soon to be revealed. Sound design is also important here, as there is an escalating wave of mechanical ramping up sounds filling the air. Then, we finally get the first attack from the spacecraft as it fires beams into the crowd. The video camcorder we saw earlier drops into frame, and we start to see fleeing people getting vaporized in the viewfinder. We're now in full-on chase scene mode. As the camera runs low to the ground, tracking with the fleeing crowd, we see different people get hit by the beams and then turned into dust. These visual beats inform us of the nature of the threat and what happens when people get hit. As Ray tries to run down the street, new action story beats emerge where we see it's really hard to hide from the beams. A person is vaporized in a car. The beams are striking individuals all around Ray as he flees. When Ray changes tactic and dives into a clothing store, the strategy proves fruitless because the beams fire into the store, killing many people. And a new threat is introduced with physical debris flying into Ray's path, as seen in a vehicle smashing into the store. Ray changes tactic again and runs out of the clothing store and back into the street. He technically changes direction, going down a side street, but the threat escalates even further. Giant beams blast into houses behind him, sending a storm of debris and destruction hot on his heels. Ray changes his strategy one more time and then hides behind a nearby house and waits to see what happens. We hear and then see one of the alien spacecraft walking slowly into frame, which tells us that the threat is also now mobile. And we're constantly reminded of the size difference between the giant spacecraft and humans, as seen in how the shot is framed, as an upshot on the spacecraft with a smaller Ray in the foreground. A small button to the scene is added with a father and daughter running past Ray, reminding him that he needs to go find his own children. So overall, this action scene from War of the Worlds contains simple storybeat elements that are clearly organized and staged to maximize the horror and threat of the invading aliens. The scene is almost entirely visual with no dialogue, and the emotions of the protagonist is expertly conveyed through dynamic filmmaking.